Okay, the recording has started. And I see the participant number growing, so we're good. Just give it another couple of seconds.
Sure. I'm sorry that I'm not in living color, but this computer, my laptop, someone helped me at least get the audio, and then I sort of look like a mugshot.
No, it's perfect. Thank you. Very good. We're just delighted you could be here with us today.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. It's a respite from the working in the trenches.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you. So I will go ahead and get us started. I want to thank our audience out there and our panelists today for joining us for this Justice Sessions. This is our last one for the fall 2021 semester, and we'll be starting back up again with new programming in spring of 2022. So everyone will have to look at our website to see our calendar for the spring. But I'm really excited to introduce our panelists today. We're having a conversation with Dr. N.Y. Nathiri and Valerie Kelko about preserving Zora's Eatonville. And so I will just let everyone know that Dr. N.Y. Nathiri has worked in historic preservation for over 3 decades, with the majority of her work being on behalf of her hometown of Eatonville, Florida, which we know is popularized by the legacy of Zora Neale Hurston. Dr. Nathiri is a founding member and currently the executive director of the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community, which sponsors the annual Zora Neale Hurston Festival of the Arts and Humanities, a wonderful event. Under her leadership, the association's programs have received national recognition, including the Zora Festivals being named one of the 25 cultural tourism success stories by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and also being the recipient of the Regional Designation Award in the Humanities from the Cultural Olympiad of Atlanta. Dr. Nathiri holds an undergraduate degree in history from Ithaca College in New York and a Master of Science degree in library science from Syracuse University. She is the compiler and editor of the award-winning volume Zora Neale Hurston, A Woman and Her Community. And she is also the recipient, thank you, Valerie, for sharing that image with us. She is also the recipient of several honors, including being named Hero of Preservation by the National Trust for Historic Preservation and the Mary Call Darby Collins Award presented by the Florida Secretary of State. In addition, she is the recipient of an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree from Rollins College. So thank you so much, Dr. Nathiri, for joining us today. And I also will introduce Valerie Kelko, who is a graduate of UNF. She received her bachelor's and her master's degrees in English from UNF, and it's great to see Valerie again. She's wonderful. She is currently a PhD student, a teaching assistant, and a graduate assistant for the English department at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. Valerie's research concentration is African American literature with a focus on Southern women's writing, engaging with the body and the environment. Her digital skills and interests intersect with her research and inspire her projects. Valerie was awarded a fellowship for the National Endowment for the Humanities 2021 Summer Institute titled Hurston on the Horizon, Past, Present, and Future. She's also the recipient of a National Humanities Center Graduate Student Summer Residency in 2019 and the University of Pennsylvania Summer Digital Resources and Methods Lab also in 2019. As a Florida native, Valerie has been privileged to reside in the same region as Hurston and have access to Hurston's homes, archives, and burial ground, and has volunteered in the past with Dr. Nathiri and the Eatonville Museum. She's dedicated to merging her digital skills with her archival work about Hurston to create innovative digital open educational resources that will expand our understanding of Hurston, her work, and how we share that knowledge. So again, I welcome Dr. Nathiri and Valerie. for this conversation. I will let everyone know that the conversation will be about 45 minutes long, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screens a Q&A button where you can place any questions that you have at any point during the conversation. And when we get to the Q&A portion, I'll read those for everyone. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Leverett, for those wonderful introductions. And thank you, Dr. Nathiri, for taking the time to speak with us today.
My
and
pleasure.
so, thank you. So I was just hoping maybe we could start off, Dr. Nathiri, with you speaking a little bit about your academic background and how that inspired you to coming into the work that you're doing now.
Well, I have been a library user and a person for whom the library has been a kind of nurturing experience for almost as long as I can remember. I say that because I am in essence a documentarian. I am in essence an archivist. In fact, my daughter says to me, "Mom, you are really a hoarder. You just have a staff to protect you." And that it really to me is a great compliment, because the way that we actually have access to our histories, no matter what that refers to, in part comes from the remembrances, the documents, the memorabilia, the stories that that allow us to know and appreciate what life is like or has been in a past era. So I say that because in my work with the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community, I find a convergence or confluence of the kinds of the academic discipline in which I've been engaged as a student of history. My undergraduate major was in American history, and my honors thesis as a senior student was on Black abolitionists. In addition, when I studied for my master's, my concentration was in archives and manuscripts. And I had the pleasure of being in school at a time when you could actually go into the rare book room of Cornell University, Olin Library, and handle the papers from the 19th century, actually could interact personally. I don't know that that's really still the case, in part because unfortunately colleagues, or let's say scholars, who I say as an aside, know what to steal because they have studied, that really there's been a disservice in terms of filching or taking of documents. So in some instances, in many instances, I'm understanding that personal interaction or that personal engagement with documents may not be as readily available as it once was, let's say in the late 1960s and early 1970s of the 20th century. So also in my background, I was a student of the violin. I say that because in both instances, in terms of history and in terms of music and practice, it is, in other words, it's a kind of discipline. There's a kind that you must have. It comes if you're going to make progress in the field, you have to practice. And so what I have found as really a privilege is to be able to live in my hometown, a town of only about 2,500 people, and yet be engaged at the highest levels with people from around the world in terms of the intellect and the creative. So I just feel very, very fortunate. I'm privileged to work with a team of people that for whom quality and commitment are tantamount. And so I'm hoping that what I've said gives some sense to who I am and the work in which I'm engaged.
Thank you for letting us in to know a little bit about you and your life and your backgrounds. I was wondering if next maybe we can discuss the historical and cultural importance of Eatonville and your extensive efforts to preserve the Eatonville community.
All right, in this instance, I'm going to try to rein in my passion because the reality is that Eatonville is a dinosaur. If Eatonville were to go away, to disappear, and I'm speaking about now the community. I'm not talking about having a road sign that says, you know, that this is about the living, breathing, the energy of the community that Zora Neale Hurston really has made a point of cherish, a point of how should I say, just special, emotionally special to really so many people around the world. Eatonville is, there's a certain spirit that really resides there. I have a colleague who says that Eatonville is sort of like Brigadoon in the sense that it is greater, it's greater than its physical existence. I say that Eatonville represents what is really the cultural legacy, the heritage legacy of people of African ancestry in this country, recognizing that the overwhelming number of people of African ancestry in this country had resided for a couple centuries or more in the South. And it is Zora Neale Hurston's ability to understand what Eatonville represents during her lifetime and her commitment to the primary research that she conducted. It's that research that actually lets us know about the authentic folkways of the people of Eatonville and what they are representative of in terms of culture and in terms of what they represent in terms of American culture, right? Zora Neale Hurston, as your audience may know, was a student of the preeminent anthropologist. As a matter of fact, Franz Boas is often identified as the father of American anthropology. So she was trained in that discipline. And then to be able to go back to her hometown, or she said her native village, and remembering when she says her native village, Eatonville, when she was living, might have been a couple hundred people. You know, sometimes when we use language and village, native village may have a pejorative frame of reference for some people, but when she says native village, she means a small place, and she talks about it not as if that's a derogatory, not in a derogatory reference. It's just a fact that it's a small group of people that constituted her community, and so her recognizing as what we called an educated observer. She was able to interact within that community and to be able to document the folkways of the people. Now, as it happens, in terms of American culture, so much of what is essentially American is essentially African inspired, right? And so what you have then is this kind of continuity. And Eatonville today, being a community of about 2,500 on a good day, still is a small town, still has that kind of those, how do you say, the continuities that exist generationally. For example, my mother, who passed just a year ago, basically a year ago this year at 102, my mother knew Zora Neale Hurston. She knew her as a person, as a living being. Zora Neale Hurston and my family had connections. And I want to use an anecdote here. You know, we talk about Zora Neale Hurston as a maverick. We talk about her being charismatic. We talk about her being poor. So this is an instance where that comes into play. Rollins College is located in Winter Park, about 10 minutes away from Eatonville. We're talking now the 1930s. Okay. Zora Neale Hurston had a connection with certain faculty members at Rollins College, and she knew my Uncle Gus to be a very, very strong swimmer. Very strong. He actually was a natural athlete, as I've come to know, because he did golfing. And okay. So in 1936, the 1936 Olympics was the Olympics where Adolf Hitler was going to make the world know that the Aryan race was superior. We know, however, that Jesse Owens in 1936 sort of, shot a hole in that propaganda. Well, my Zora Neale Hurston wanted to get a swimming scholarship for my Uncle Gus so that he could attend Rollins College in the 1930s now. My Uncle Gus, of course, is an African American, but Zora Neale Hurston wanted to see him get a swimming scholarship so he could compete for the Olympic trials. All right. Now we know that, please, was that even feasible? Not really, because we're talking the 1930s and Rollins College, was, my Uncle Gus was not going to get into Rollins College, but that's the kind of mind she had. That's the kind of mind that she had. And I say all of that to say that all of that circulates in the cosmos of Eatonville then, and still Eatonville now. Now, what that also means is this is not, sometimes academics, and I can say this with affection, because we're in an academic setting and you know how academics can be, we think and we just, But the reality is that Eatonville is still a destination, right? And it's not just a destination at the annual Zora Festival, which of course, granted, the Zora Festival is what is a point of the spear. Yes, at the festival time, we really have been fortunate to be able to assemble the creme de la creme of the arts and humanities. There's no doubt about that. But on a year-round basis, people come to Eatonville and they come to the museum named in her honor. And sometimes people say, but what have you got here? It's not as if you got a lot of buildings, a lot of built environment. No, but we have that story. We have what is present. So when I say to you that I want to rein in my passion, I don't want to just go off on you. But the point is, it's really quite something on a day-to-day basis, to see the kind of interest that Eatonville represents, and of course why that's important in terms of economic development is within the world, travel, tourism, hospitality is in the top 5 industries in the world, right? And so that means that COVID-19 notwithstanding, people travel, they are interested. And so that means in terms of economic development, that is a way our history, our heritage, our Hurston connection forms a basis as an economic catalyst in terms of community. And as I said, I'm hoping that I've been coherent in the answer as I've tried to weave together different elements.
Oh no, you did well. I appreciate the story, and my sincerest condolences for the passing of your mother.
Thank you.
She sounds like a wonderful woman,
She
and
was indeed. I can't hold a candle to her.
oh, I can relate with my mother as well. Um, so you kind of touched briefly on PEC, or the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community. I was wondering if maybe you would like to expand on that a little bit more for those of us who might
That,
know about that.
absolutely. And here I'm going to do what they say, I've forgotten what that expression is, but I'm going to make a pitch. If you really want to get an understanding of the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community, as your schedule will allow, you should listen to the podcast, An Eatonville Saga, the story of a historic Black town struggle to survive and thrive. Because Preserve Eatonville Community comes out of a specific context, and that context is the civic pride of the people of Eatonville, right? Eatonville represents what is called is a representative of the race colonies movement. And in the book that you were so generous in holding up, Eleanor Ramsey and Everett Fly contribute an essay that speaks about what the race colonies movement was all about. So many of your people in this audience may be literary scholars or people interested in literature, but historians, especially of the American South, or of the post-Civil War era, and knowing something of Reconstruction and the Rutherford B. Hayes election of 1876 and all of that. Eatonville comes out of that context. And in fact, Eatonville has survived uninterrupted since its incorporation in 1887. In 1987, the Orange County Board of County Commissioners decided that it was going to place a 5-lane road in a 2-lane road situation. And that just could not happen, because if it were to happen, then Eatonville's historic character would disappear. And so, as I've spoken to you about Eatonville in such glowing terms, the reality is that Eatonville is a low socioeconomic community, as we are sitting here today, all right? Which means that in terms of political power, in the American context, low socioeconomic communities just too bad, so sad. Whatever the powers that be want to happen to you, that's what happens. And so when we heard about what Orange County was proposing to do, understanding now that there was absolutely no technical merit for 5-laning, but the crude realities are that Eatonville today, as it was in 1987, remains the last major undeveloped parcel of land in Orange County. And I-4, it sits right in that corridor. And so there was an effort for development. And what we were able to do, which we have come to find out decades later, because frankly, when you're in the midst of a fight, you don't really know, you can't know all of the intricacies of what is happening. But thanks to extensive third-party research by Gramon McPherson, who was about 3 or 4 years ago, was a master's student in history at the University of Central Florida, based on his third-party research, coupled with our knowledge as people involved in the fight, we were able to see why it was that we were actually able to win a fight to keep our community intact. Now that's important, because actually in the way of the world, grassroots organizations, as some of the older people would say, bless their hearts, but there's a lot of passion, but they don't win against government, because government is by its nature it has the power. So grassroots organizations don't generally win fights against the government. So just triple that with African-American grassroots organizations. That's not supposed to happen. But we were successful in thwarting that. Now it took us 20 years, but we were able to manage to overcome that. And so, as I say again, but if you, it really is, it's like a soap opera. That phase, it really was gut wrenching. And if you want, and it's on demand, you can get them, as you say, where you get your podcast, Spotify, iHeart. You can also click on preserveeatonville.org. That's preserveeatonville.org. And you'll see on the homepage a reference to the podcast and Eatonville Saga.
Thank you. And I did, Dr. Nathiri, drop the web links in the chat so that our attendees can go visit the various sites. And yes, and that's a lot to take in because Orlando is a tourism epicenter, right?
It is indeed. It is indeed. But the kind of development in that you would be looking at in Eatonville is, in the parlance of the day, gentrification. I mean, that's just the short of it. So, and it's not as if I had a political friend say to me, and words were never truer. These fights don't just end. As a matter of fact, they're like cyclical. 30 years ago, all right, we were able to do that, and now, and I would just say to anyone who's in the audience and who has the ability to impact, you see, gentrification only occurs when people give up their land, right? When people don't make good decisions about the importance. As they say, they're not making any more land. Okay, we've got here. Well, the land that we've got, this is what we have. The environment that we have, people about the climate, about all of this. This is what we have as human beings. It's finite. It's finite. And so the decisions that you make, as we say, decisions have consequences. And hopefully people will keep that in mind as they go through life, no matter what their instances, whatever their circumstances.
So in continuing this part of the conversation, I was hoping maybe you could speak a little bit more about the yearly Zora Festival for those of us who unfortunately have not had the pleasure to be able to attend it, and how that event helps to establish or put Eatonville on the map as a cultural historical destination.
Well, Miss Valerie, you've just thrown me a softball, so let me see if I can just knock it out of the park. Okay. The Zora Neale Hurston Festival of the Arts and Humanities is a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, intergenerational programming that does three things. These are our goals. They have always been the goals, and they remain. And what these goals do allow us to really, the programming opportunities are infinite because the human mind and spirit is infinite. So we are trying to celebrate the life and work of Zora Neale Hurston. We're trying to celebrate the historic significance of her hometown, Eatonville, and we're attempting to celebrate the cultural contributions which people of African ancestry have made to the United States and to the world. So those objectives, those goals, clearly you can see the world is our oyster, to paraphrase Zora Neale Hurston. And so what that means is, starting in 1990 with the first annual festival when we were able to bring Alice Walker, who at that time was being celebrated for her, she was a Pulitzer Prize winning author of The Color Purple, which had been made into a blockbuster movie. We were able to bring Robert Hemingway, her literary biographer. We were able to bring Ruby Dee, who is a theatrical legend. In other words, what we were able to do was to establish a kind of standard that if you were in the academy, if you were in secondary education, if you were in the creative arts, if you were a person who was just interested, you were a reader, if you were interested in culture and heritage and history, that you could come to Eatonville, that you could actually come to Eatonville and experience fine quality programming, right? We said we had something from the tiniest person to the oldest person, to a person who might be functionally illiterate, to a postdoctorate person, all right? And so that we wanted to prepare programming in the spirit of Zora Neale Hurston, where she said she wanted to provide to the masses of people the very best in terms of culture. You know, that's why she actually spent so much time. She thought that theater was the optimal medium for the transmission of culture as opposed to reading. And as you know, if you look at theater, if you look at television, you look at movies, well, particularly where you engage, the more senses, this is the case in any instance, the more senses that you engage, the more thorough is the experience as a human being. So, so when you come to festival, it means that, yes, you're going to see exhibitions, you're going to see theater, you're going to hear public talks, you're going to be able, and because we really have been authentic. In other words, some people have asked, well, is this a fundraising event? Well, actually, yes, we do need to raise revenue, but we're not doing all of this for fundraising. I mean, you know, you could do something else if it were just about fundraising. It really is about that E, and our middle initial for P, E, and C. For it's about educational excellence. And frankly, as we are, particularly, I guess we should say, as we're at this time in the American society, it's very important that people have the ability to engage in activities that are based on fact, that have the customer or the guest first, and where, you know, you're trying to just give good service. I say all of this because we are preparing for our 33rd annual Zora Festival season. Now, I'm going to say to you without any hesitation, if you want to have, they say, have a really good time, you need to go visit zorafestival.org and look at the kinds of programming that we're doing. Over the years, we've also built collaborative energy. And so not only will you have that core of programming that comes out of Preserve Eatonville community, but you're going to have the Orlando Urban Film Festival that is occurring. You're going to have the Africa America Women's Economic Forum, a collaboration with involving Rollins College and the Wilson College Textiles, the Wilson College of Textiles with North Carolina State University. And you're going to be able to experience the women from the Access Bank in Lagos, Nigeria. Now, when we talk about Eatonville as an international destination, you know, that is the real truth. Over the last 3 years, we really have been able to build from the ground up a relationship with women in Africa and women in America as we try to, again, in the spirit of Zora Neale Hurston, have practical results in terms of programming. So this is not just the ivory tower. No, this is how do you build network? How do you, the entrepreneurial spirit and the work of women involved in their own businesses, how do you bring that forward? In addition, the NerdCon, you know, we are, in my generation, the age that I am, it's always important that we are relevant and that we resonate with the young people. And I'm learning. I have to tell you, I'm learning right along. I'm excited to see how much I am learning about the NerdCon and about Afrofuturism and these, in terms of the humanities. Afrofuturism is what we call the hot humanities. All right, that is an area of exploration that these scholars say 35 to 50. I mean, that is a serious niche of scholarship, and to be able to bring those scholars and those people that are interested in globally. So again, please visit zorafestival.org. There are many programs. We are doing hybrid. We are in person. We are going back to the Outdoor Festival of the Arts. And that will be the 28th through the 30th of January. In keeping with our theme, we're going to have George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelic. All right, everyone does that on Saturday, and then smooth classic jazz with Pieces of a Dream on Sunday. So as I said, all I can say is go visit the website. And if you have the ability, you really need to think about January 25 through 30. If you can give that much time and you can do it, you won't want to miss it. Other than that, purchase the Weekender Pass. Purchase the Weekender Pass, come on down come down to with us. The Sheraton Orlando North is our site, is our hospitality hotel. I think the room rates are $136 a night, double occupancy, and that Weekender package is available to you. Now, if you cannot get to festival, if you must do it virtually, we have a souvenir package for you. And that souvenir package includes a Zora Festival poster, a fine arts poster. It includes the t-shirt, and it includes the guide to the whole season. We are now not just in the month of January, we're in the season of January, June, where we will be celebrating Black Music Month as an arts education for middle and high school students. And then in October, the Hatitude Cultural Flair. So all of that is very important in terms of how we help to sustain ourselves. But we are like other arts organizations or community revitalization organizations. We really rely in part on donations. So this audience, I'm going to say, take one of your cups of coffee, take your Starbucks, your Wawa, and make a donation to preserveeatonville.org. If you go on that website, we have something we call the Cushion Campaign, and it will point you there. The other thing I want to say to you is if you are buying Amazon, there's a program called Amazon Smiles. That when you purchase, something comes to us. I'm saying this because in the real world, in the spirit of Zora Neale Hurston, I mean, this is not just, chat and yes, and it's really, how do you make a difference? And individually, everyone in the range of my voice, as well as the other persons that you can speak with. This is a practical way of making a difference. And we're fully transparent. We have our 990. We do our annual audit. In other words, all the things that you are supposed to do as a 501c3, we do. And when you look at our administrative costs, we are somewhere between 17 and 20% of everything that is devoted to administration. That is, as we say, very, very good. It's a very good percentage in terms of what goes to programming as opposed to what goes to administration. And as we're coming, I listen to my public radio station. This is the end of year campaign. For anybody who has the ability, to make a tax deductible contribution, think about us, please. Right.
Fantastic. And I cannot wait. I will definitely be present for Eatonville Zora Fest this week or this coming year. So before we have a chance to get to Q&A from the audience, I was wondering if maybe you would like to talk briefly about future envisions of the preservation of
Yes.
Eatonville and what we can do as a global community to help in those, to aid in those efforts.
Absolutely. Now we do see our vision unequivocally is to have Eatonville develop into an international destination for culture and heritage, as represented by the multidisciplines of Zora Neale Hurston, folklore, literature, music, theater, anthropology. All of those are available to us. And so, for example, we are looking to really develop that year-round cultural heritage tourism niche market in Eatonville. We're looking to, that's the external part. The internal part is to try to make certain that we have what we call the Zora STEM initiative for the very, very young, not pre-K. No, we want them 18 months, okay? Because if you have been around toddlers who have access to a cell phone or a smartphone, have you ever seen those toddlers? They work those. They're not playing. They manipulate those. I saw this, as a matter of fact, this is the anecdote, some years ago, maybe 10 years ago or more. We were at festival, and there was a toddler sitting on the curb waiting for her mother to come back out of the museum. And this little girl, I mean, yes, she had that gadget, and she, I was impressed to see she was intentional. This was not just a flip flap. So we need to be able to work with those youngsters, basically when they come out of the womb, and it's a family structure. But the point is that you don't have to have lots of money a child doesn't need lots of money to be nurtured. So if we can work with the littlest ones on a consistent basis, we like to see toddler through sixth grade, through middle school. If we can work with them, nurturing them, this is not about how you take a test. This is exposing them to an environment that is rich, that then allows them to prepare for the good paying jobs of the 21st century. If you have a good paying job, then you can remain in Eatonville. You don't become a victim of a permanent lower economic status. And so for us, the short answer is we have two strategies for preserving the Eatonville community as long as the United States of America exists. And that is internally making sure that the children are academically prepared, that they become sponges for knowledge and development. And on the external side, the economic development comes in that niche market of cultural heritage tourism. So writ large, that is what we see as our vision.
And it's a beautiful vision. I like to borrow from Bettina Love of freedom dreaming, right? I of course will do what I can, my part, to aid in supplying that vision. Thank you. And it looks like we are at time for Q&A from the audience, Dr. Leverett.
Yes, absolutely. So again, thank you both. I've enjoyed listening to this conversation. And, one of the things that strikes me about what you've said, Dr. Nathiri, is that preservation is also very much about the tangible and the shape that we want our present to take, and not just about the historical and the remembered. So that's definitely something that I appreciate thinking about. And I too want to be at the festival this coming year. So Thanks for letting us know of the great things happening. So we do have a question in the chat and one in the Q&A to begin, but please, audience members, if you have additional questions, please put those in the Q&A box for us. So the first question was from Marcia Magnus, who asked if you have any insight into what might have been Zora Neale Hurston's saddest moment.
Not at all, because what I know of her through my family connections is a woman who was joyous and who was fully engaged. So I don't know, I don't have within my frame of reference any kind of backstory on Zora Neale Hurston and any negative or depressing thoughts that she might have had.
Thank you. Also, Alexander Jenkins asked, how did the closing of Hungerford High affect the culture in Eatonville?
I would tell you that Hungerford School has an emotional attachment still for people in Eatonville because there's a direct connection. Hungerford High School suffered the same fate as what happened throughout the South with historically high achieving Black high schools. They were devalued, they were denigrated, they became alternative schools. And in fact, right as we speak, Orange County has demolished all the buildings that were on the Hungerford on that tract of land, and so that's a challenge that we are currently involved in. But I can tell you that the love, I talked about certain anchors in Eatonville, so faith, family, the love of education, civic pride. Those are the four anchors that upon which Eatonville society rests. And Hungerford School is, it has an emotional, how would you say, connection still. And that comes from a time when there was such an attachment, a vibrant attachment between children, their parents, their teachers. Absolutely.
Thank you for that answer. So audience members, if you have additional questions, please put them in the Q&A box. I also wanted to ask, going back to the beginning of your conversation with Valerie, you told us about being a student yourself and engaging in archival research and having your hands on documents. And you mentioned how that kind of engagement with documents has changed. I'm wondering what you think of digital preservation and digital archives.
I think the digital archives absolutely are necessary, but I think that digital archives demand a futuristic, reckoning. In other words, right now we have cassette tapes and we have DVDs. And in order for you have to convert those to a different technology. I had the privilege of listening to an archivist who was traveling as a presenter at University of Central Florida. He was the director of manuscripts or for the Tuskegee Archives, and he was talking about the fact that you have to be able to understand that 50 years from now, this technology, this is not so the digital realm. That's another. Really, you have to think very, very comprehensively about how to hold on. Now, I personally, as a university librarian, I trained. I will never turn away my paper. I'm not going to get, because I must have my paper, because at least it's there, and it needs to be conserved on best principles, best practices. But the digital realm, actually, it opens up the world too. So yes, I'm both and.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So we have an additional question in our Q&A box. Does Zora Neale Hurston still have family living in Eatonville?
Not in Eatonville, but close by. In Winter Park, her oldest living niece lives in Seminole County, as does her oldest living nephew, Vivian Hurston Bowden, as well as Clifford Hurston, both of whom were college educated. Dr. Bowden retired as a principal after many years as an assistant principal, and Dr. Clifford Hurston retired from Bethune-Cookman University. Zora Neale Hurston also has people in Brooklyn, New York, in Connecticut, as well as in in Missouri, in Texas. So yes, she has people. She still has people all around the country.
Did they come to the Zora Festival?
Indeed, we do see them. And in fact, the Zora Neale Hurston Trust, we are one of the few organizations that actually has a license, we paid to use the registered trademark, the registered mark for festival. We've had a working relationship with the Zora Neale Hurston Trust for decades.
Wonderful, great, thank you. Well, I don't know if anyone else in the audience has additional questions to ask, but my final question is, how would you describe Eatonville today?
Eatonville today is still a little town. It is a close-knit community. It is, it's still, it is a place where I have a colleague who says there are not any homeless people. There means to be people who don't want to go home, and that may be a little bit of exaggerating, because from time to time you do see people going with their shopping carts, grocery carts. I would say that Eatonville is a place that the upside is that people can really keep up with you in Eatonville. People in Eatonville are going to know your business. That's the upside. That's also the downside. All right. I can remember some years ago that I got a call that there was a car at my mother's home. It was at 10 o'clock at night, and my mother and my brother were living, sharing the home, but they knew that it was not usual to have somebody at Mrs. Dinkin's home at 10 o'clock at night. So they were calling me to ask me what's going. So that's how that's the upside. The downside is, yes, people tend to know in about, what do you say, how many degrees of separation, maybe 2 degrees of separation. People are going to know your business, whether it's true or not.
Well, sounds like a place worth visiting still.
Oh, absolutely. And people really, now that is one of the legacies of Zora Neale Hurston and the work in Eatonville and Festival. You will find people very, very welcoming. Nice. They are proud that people come to Eatonville, and they want to be very, very helpful. I can remember when we were just starting out, and I was still teaching part-time at Valencia Community College. And so I think I taught Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and I could get to the museum by about 1 o'clock. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I could be there longer, and people knew my schedule, and they knew, they said, well, she'll be in. And then as we had people in Eatonville, the great gift that the people of Eatonville gave initially was staffing, volunteering at the Zora Neale Hurston National Museum. And that was a way as well. But people welcome that they know people are coming to Eatonville because of Zora Neale Hurston. They are pleased that people are coming. And so you can always find that everybody is welcoming. Everybody's welcoming.
Thank you so much. Well, it looks like it's almost time for us to adjourn today, but Valerie has one more question in the chat. So please do ask that.
Sorry, this is just something that I've been wanting to ask you for a while, Dr. Nathiri. So Hurston writes in her autobiography, Dust Tracks on a Road, she describes Eatonville as what you might call hitting a straight lick with a crooked stick. And I'm just wondering, after all of your extensive experience working to preserve Eatonville's legacy and to establish it as this site of international cultural heritage tourism, what does this quote mean to you?
It means that even though Eatonville is the poster child for all of the, what are those called, the disparities? Absolutely, it really is a poster child. That having been said, we still have so much upon which we can rely and upon which we can build, that we are able to prosper emotionally, physically, economically. We can still prosper, all right? Even that is, in other words, you know, you say you make something out of nothing, or you find a way. This is something in Black tradition. You find a way out of no way. When there's you still, that's that human spirit. That is that human spirit. And I think that is what keeps us all going. And I think, frankly, when I say that, I'm not speaking now in narrow ethnic or racial terms. And that's really why, and I can use this last few minutes to tell you another anecdote about why it is that Zora Neale Hurston is loved and embraced. She is a great writer because what she does has a human connection. When I was undergraduate co-ed at Ithaca College, the late poet, Nobel laureate Isaac Bashevis Singer was a speaker at one of the what you call the evening programs, and there he was asked why it was that he wrote exclusively about the Jewish experience. And he said, I write about the Jewish experience because that's what I know. And anybody who teaches expository writing can tell you in a minute that you tell your students you write about what you know and what you enjoy. Because if you do those two things, what you write will have life to it. It will be of interest. Then he added rather quickly, he said, but great writing, even though it must happen, it must come out of a specific context. If it is great writing, it's going to resonate with human beings, no matter who they are or their circumstances, because great writing is going to concern itself with stories that have a universal appeal. And so that is what has happened with Zora Neale Hurston. The stories that she tells, you know, you look at her classic, that scholars consider her a literary classic. Well, I mean, the protagonist is an illiterate Black woman. Now, when you get right down to it, and Hurston says, if she had had some educational training, she could have better understood what was happening to her as she was making life's journey to find herself. But everybody in the hearing of my voice knows that at some point, you're apt to reckon with, who am I? Not who is my parents, not who is my husband, who is my partner, not my children, but who am I? And so, you know, that is a part of the explanation of why, as a storyteller, Zora Neale Hurston resonates with people in Japan and Nigeria and Saudi Arabia and Italy, you know, all over the world.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much. And I think that that's a wonderful note on which we can conclude. I wish we had more time, but thank you again, Dr. Nathiri, for sharing your knowledge and your experience with us. And thank you so much, Valerie, for your time as well, and helping facilitate this conversation. So thanks to the audience for attending, for helping support with your presence. And we look forward to seeing you at future justice sessions in the spring. So be well, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.